Welcome to episode 99 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. Stageworthy features conversations with Canadian theatre makers, from actors to directors to playwrights and more. If you want to drop me a line, you can find Stageworthy on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website at stageworthypodcast.com. My guest this week is theatre and film artist Cathy Huang. You can catch Cathy in Filament Incubator and Epigraph Collective's Imp, coming in November.
One of the things that I'm always really curious about with people is why they chose a life in the theater. One of those things that we, a little bit crazy of us all to do. So what is it that drew you to the theater?
I don't know. I've kind of always been a performer. I've done it since I was very young. I always wanted to be a singer. I always wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be famous. I wanted to be on Disney Channel.
Okay.
But when I was in high school, you take the careers class. I decided that it wasn't a very viable career, so I decided to go into psychology instead. So I actually went to university for psychology and ended up switching into theater and film again later.
How long did you last in psychology?
I never actually got into the program. Okay, so I initially got into the program.
Okay.
And then I messed up, and I forgot to click submit. When you apply for universities, you get the offers. I forgot to click submit. Because I procrastinated everything. So I had to go into my guidance counselor, and she ended up getting me into humanities instead of social science.
Okay.
But yeah, then I never ended up getting into the program that I wanted to, because I wanted to do a double major with psychology and English, and that was a whole different set of requirements. Right. And I kept trying, and then eventually I gave up, and I realized I didn't want to do it anyway.
Okay.
So that's why. Yeah.
Do you remember... were you one of those kids that was always, performing? When the grown-ups came over, you'd be, running in to, perform in some way? Or was there anything that sparked your interest?
I know there are a lot of people, a lot of celebrities who talk about how when they were younger, they used to put on these, elaborate skits for their relatives and stuff. I never really did that. I was just kind of always doing it as, my own little thing and not, a big production.
Okay.
Type of thing. If there was an audience, there was an audience, but it was largely just for myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I decided I wanted to do it. I've just been doing it for as long as I can remember.
And when you were doing it in high school, and did you convince yourself that you should try to do psychology, or did you have help?
Honestly, it was largely myself. My parents have always been really supportive.
Okay.
They've enrolled me in piano lessons, singing lessons, acting lessons, drawing lessons, horseback riding lessons. Everything that I wanted to do, they let me do.
Okay.
But being from an immigrant family, it was it was difficult to reconcile the idea that I could go into the arts. Knowing how hard my parents had worked to come here and how much they had sacrificed, and how my parents didn't even get to pursue their own dreams.
Right.
So I felt really guilty, and I didn't think that I could make any money off of it because I didn't have any understanding of how to become a successful actor or singer without just being discovered and getting instantly famous.
Right.
So I figured that it was either struggle for the rest of my life or pick a different career.
And so you tried to pick a different career.
Yeah, and it clearly didn't work.
It was the fates were steering you in a certain way.
Yeah. It was my friend in university, actually, who was already in the theater and film program, and he convinced me to do it. So he was audition for these plays that I'm working on, just do it. And it took him a year to convince me to actually audition for something.
Were you, and you were really resisting it?
Yeah, I was no, I'm not. I'm past that. I'll do it as a hobby, but this is what I'm doing now.
What's funny is how much, because I spent a period of time for maybe 3 years or so where I was no, I've given up the theater. I don't do that anymore. And then there comes a point where somebody asks you if you want to do something, and you're like, oh, I don't really do that, but okay.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, I'm in!
Yeah. That year, the first year that I think was the third year I was in university, is the first year that I got back into it, and I did 4 plays that year. So it was like an immediate jump back in, and now it's hard to remember that time because I feel like that was very much a time that I wasn't myself.
Yeah.
When I felt like I wasn't who I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's interesting because you were saying just a minute ago about how you had, like, being from an immigrant family, you had these feelings of guilt about pursuing your dream.
Yeah.
Which, from a certain point of view, number one, I think that's one of those things that probably is something that affects first generation immigrant families more than anything else. But also is like, in a way, they came here so you could pursue your dream, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
There's like this weird dichotomy.
Yeah, you're right. But I feel like this is something that a lot of, especially like Asian immigrants, Asian second gen kids feel, right? Because they know, they watch their parents struggle. And there's so much pressure in the Asian community to like be a doctor or a scientist or a lawyer.
Of course. I think that's that way in a lot of immigrant communities, not just the Asian community, but generally I think for a lot of immigrant families, it's like, be these prestigious things, you know?
Yeah.
But you didn't actually get that from your family. It came from yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I knew that my parents wanted me to be a doctor because there was always like that little, hey, maybe do this. And I'd be like, nah, I'm happy with what I'm doing. But they absolutely never pressured me into it. They've been so supportive. I have the greatest parents in the world. And I just felt so guilty. I felt like I was taking advantage of them. And I've always kind of been like that. When I was younger, I used to get an allowance. And then I asked my parents to stop giving me the allowance.
What?
Yeah,
You're
I know.
like the only kid that's ever asked their parents not to give them an allowance.
I know. I felt guilty. I didn't want them to support me like that anymore. And I was like, maybe like 12 or something. I wasn't even making my own money yet. I was just like, no, I don't need your help. I'm going to make it on my own.
When you decided that you were going to go into the film and theater course at school, you had to audition. No? You just could transfer in?
No, yeah.
Is that the advantage to a university over a college? Is that?
No, I went to McMaster, which is not a very big theater school.
Okay.
So that's why it's definitely more of a general program there. It's not an audition process. You just kind of get in and you do whatever you want. So you can explore. Okay. So you don't stream. So you can explore design. You can do stage managing. You can do kind of everything that you want. Yeah. But the problem is that you don't specialize.
Right.
So you don't get like all of this training that you would normally get at a conservatory.
So what were the areas that you were interested in?
Because I switched in so late, I technically wasn't in the program until my 5th year. I did mostly acting. Okay. My final year, I wish I had gotten a chance to do the design because I think that's the benefit of a program like that. But then I would have had to take a 6th year, and I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. So my last year I did the thesis course, which is to direct and write your own play. Okay. So that's what I did. That was my big thing. Okay. In university, everything else was just like acting courses and stuff like that.
And what was your thesis play?
It's called Go Home. It's about Asian Canadians and kind of all the intersections of crap that they put up with, I guess, like racism, sexism, Orientalism. And I'm really happy with how the production turned out, but I'm currently rewriting it so that it's specifically focused on Chinese women. Okay. Because I think that's obviously what I know how best to write, and I didn't feel comfortable telling the stories of Asian men or of South Asian women. Okay. Were you,
so the original version was sort of like more generalized as far as like the Asian experience?
Yeah, it was just kind of everything, and that was already too much. We started off wanting to cover all women of color and Asian men because my partner in directing and writing was very interested in indigenous communities. So we just kind of had it open at first, and then we ended up narrowing it down, but still not. It wasn't narrowed down enough.
Right.
But yeah.
So as you start to work on it further, and you get more specific, are there things that doing it the first time taught you?
Definitely. I feel that because McMaster's in Hamilton, I feel that it was very much catered towards a more older white audience. But that's not who I want my play to be for. I want my play to be for young Asian women, immigrants, first gen or second gen or whatever gen. I want it to be for people like me, right? Because growing up, I never had any kind of representation. I didn't have any Asian female role models. So yeah, the play is for people like me and for anyone who can relate to it, really, but it's not, anyone can relate to it, but it's not for them.
No, of course.
And also didn't have any women of color mentors while I was working on this play, so it would really be nice to get some of that and help them influence the show more.
I mean, so doing this in Hamilton, where I hate to generalize about Hamilton, but my experience in Hamilton, because I was there for the Fringe Festival last year, there's not a lot of people of color that I saw in Hamilton. Did you find that? I mean, you spent some time there. Did you find that I'm right about that? And that also, like, is it difficult? Like, what was your experience like there?
It's definitely not a very diverse community. Even at the university, which you would think would be very diverse, the theater and film program is very much still white, which it has improved.
Right.
But when I did my first play, I was only one of 2 Asian women doing it, and I wasn't even in the program yet, but I was like the only Asian actor, really. And then we did a play the next year called Lady in the Red Dress by David Yee. And that brought out a lot of Asian actors, which was really great, because then a bunch of them started joining the program.
Nice.
So yeah, it opened up a lot of doors.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, following you on Facebook, as I do, I know that I mean, you're very vocal about about stereotypes, about Orientalism and things like that.
Yeah.
Did you find it difficult to find a voice in that, or did you just get so frustrated that you just had to start calling it out where you saw it?
I think that this isn't something that I really realized when I was younger. It took, as much as it sucks to say, it took being in Lady to really get me to want to look into the injustice that the Asian community faces. Because the year before, I did a play called Bust, and it was about sexual assault. And I'd already been kind of interested in educating myself more about it, but it wasn't until I was in that play that it really motivated me to educate myself. Okay. And it was the same for Lady. Yeah, it was, I guess as soon as I started reading articles and statistics and learning more about this stuff, I just got mad. And I started realizing all of the things that I wasn't seeing before, and how a lot of people in the Asian community still don't see the racism that we experience. I think, like, of all the communities, we're pretty much the least woke.
And do you have a theory about why that is?
I think it's because it's just not talked about, right? The Black community has been fighting back against racism for so long that they've claimed more space, and they've made more of a voice for themselves. Whereas the Asian community is just kind of sitting back and not really doing anything, which is not to say that there are not some really amazing Asian activists out there. But I think as a whole, the Asian community doesn't really fight back as much as we should. And that's because of a lack of education.
Education about the injustice and the racism. I mean, from a certain point of view, if you look at pop culture, Asians in general have not been particularly treated very well in almost every film. I was actually thinking about that because, you know, before I talk to somebody, I like to consider a few things we might talk about. And I kind of figured, I knew that I was going to bring this up because it's something that I think is very important to you.
Yes, for sure.
And if I think about the kind of roles that are available for an Asian actor or actress, and I was actually just thinking about even on the Netflix Marvel series, that you've got you've got martial artists, you've got Yakuza, and you've got I don't know, ninja something. There's a limited option for what the roles are considered to be. Whereas I think it would be far more interesting just to have people who were people.
Yeah.
Instead of having to fall into these categories.
Yeah. I just think that Asians are still being stereotyped, and it's very, very slowly getting better, but it's still not fast enough, right?
No.
There's still so much whitewashing.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Especially recently.
I know. What is it now that this kind of that suddenly these films and television shows are coming out where it's it's okay to whitewash?
Mm-hmm. It's because before they just didn't care about minorities, and now they think that they're so progressive that race doesn't matter. But we're doing the exact same thing that we were doing before. Nothing's changed. They're just a different label.
They're just putting it in a different category.
Yeah.
It's okay because we don't see color.
Yeah.
And the worst thing that you can really say is we don't see color because everybody fucking sees color.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And I mean, if you look at a show like Luke Cage was the blackest show I've seen, but in so amazing and political and things like that. And it just the characters were black, but they were also people, which is why shouldn't be revolutionary.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that I think would be beneficial, just generally, to stop saying we don't see color and just be let's see the color and celebrate the color.
Exactly. But something that I am sick of is the whole concept of diversity, and this is a very new kind of concept to me because before I was always diversity, it's great, put a ton of people of color everywhere. But I recently had a discussion with Philip Aiken, and he basically said that the whole idea of diversity is still hinged on the idea that we're different from white people, that we're the other, right? We're different from the norm.
Okay.
Right. And so I think I'm gonna try to stop using the word diversity as much and just, I don't know what I would replace it with, but I like the idea of thinking about ourselves, about POCs in our own respect and not just as something other than white.
It's interesting. I mean, in the theater, especially in the indie theater community, but also in theater in general, we do a lot of talking about diversity. And every couple of months, there's a panel discussion about diversity and things like that. And it's interesting to think that the concept of diversity is actually harming the conversation in a way.
It can be. Because I do think that a lot of these discussions are more about educating white people than it is for people of color. Because I remember recently I went to a panel and I was hoping to learn from other people of color about how they make it work in the theater community, how they are finding work and how they're struggling in the theater community. And the whole discussion just ended up being, well, how can white people fix this? Right. But I've had this discussion so many times that it's not useful to me. And
somehow
it hasn't been useful to me for a long
that's
time.
what you were going to say that it turned into.
Yeah.
Because I think I was I don't know if I was at the same...
You were there.
Okay, yeah, I was at the same...
Yeah.
I was at the same one. And I was like, oh, I know this. I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's an uncommon place to go when the conversation is organized by white people.
For sure.
I mean, I understand... Because I think that the idea of having that conversation is everybody wants to call out the companies that aren't doing it, and they want to, and they want to encourage it, and yet it's not helpful to the people of color.
Yeah. I think that if companies really want to make a change, they need to commit to casting and employing people of color, because everyone's asking for it because it's popular. It's popular to ask for diversity, right? If you don't ask for diversity, you're kind of a dick.
Yeah.
But it's gotten to the point where that's just kind of become meaningless, and people they still don't care about casting diverse, and there are very few theater companies that will actually commit to doing so.
Yeah.
Factory, Cahoots.
Absolutely, Factory and Cahoots, yeah.
Are two great companies for doing this.
Yeah.
But yeah, they say they're going to do it, and they do it, right? They don't even really have to talk about how they're going to cast diverse. They just do it.
I think, from a certain point of view, better just to do it than to do a lot of talking about it.
Yeah.
But I think it goes deeper than just casting, because I think that...
For sure.
We have to have... Okay, I'm tired of white guys at the head of theater companies. I'm tired of another white playwright on, another white director. Let's just, I'm waiting for theater to reflect the street outside my window.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. For sure, diversity, air quotes.
Because we don't have a better word for it, right?
Yeah. Representation, I guess. Representation goes beyond just casting. It needs to happen behind the scenes as well, or else the casting doesn't really happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I don't think that these panel discussions are completely useless. I think they're very helpful to people who are wanting to learn, and I think it's great that these people want to learn. But for me personally, I think I prefer to remove myself from these situations now, just because it is a little exhausting. It gets a little exhausting to explain the same things over and over again. And while these may be new concepts to some people, they've been something that I've known for a really long time.
To my favorite part of that particular panel was watching Nina Liakino on that stage, because she's had this conversation and she's over it. She wants to have the conversation and she wants to change, but it was obvious that she's like, we're having this conversation again. Yeah. I don't have time for it, but I'm here. Yeah. Yeah. It's just she's over it in terms of having this conversation again.
I think we might be talking about different ones now. I can't remember. I thought we were talking about IndieX.
Oh, no.
But if you're talking about the first one?
I was talking about one. It was
Generator?
No, it was at another one. So, now I know which panel you were talking about.
I was talking about IndieX at first, but then you said Nina was there, so I'm thinking about a different one.
There's a different one that I was at where Nina was there, and again, it was organized by white people. It was basically for how can white people help, that sort of thing.
Was it the Generator one?
No.
Oh, okay. Because Nina was at that one, and she was also fed up.
Nina goes to I think that Nina gets asked to all of them, and she always says yes, but she's already fed up when she arrives. Yeah. The one that we were at IndieX, there were so many. I don't know if I went to the diversity, but I think
you were there.
I did. Yes, I was. Yes, I remember. But it was just as always. You're right. You're right. It was how can the white people help?
Yeah.
And
then Luke Reese made some really good points about how there are a lot of POC theater companies out there, and they're sending out lists of their actors, and they're doing all this promo, and a lot of white companies just aren't listening.
Yeah.
Right? We're putting ourselves out there, we're making names for ourselves, and we're still not making it because no one's listening.
Well, it goes deeper than just the other companies aren't listening, but the media is not listening. Because the media is covering the established white companies over some of the companies that are doing some really amazing work. In terms of the activism on this issue and also making theater, do you see that as something that you, in your work, you want to pursue and do more of?
Definitely. Yeah. I was in Stratford about a week or two ago, and I was taking a playwriting course with Donna-Michelle St.
Okay.
And we were talking about this. She asked a question to the class. Do you want to change the world with your work? And I was the only person who said yes, and everyone else in the class was an older white person. So they were like, "No, I just one person would be good, but I want to change everything." And so does she. And I think that really shows in our work, right? We talk about big political issues, and eventually I do want to make work that isn't only about the oppression that I experience, right? I want to just write stories about Asian women and people who are just people and who don't constantly have to deal with the oppression, right? But right now, at least that's what I'm focusing on. In
a way, in order to stop having to write about that, wouldn't you have to get to a point where that wasn't like part of your daily life?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess if I were to not write about it, it would just be that I'm not focusing on that for that particular play, but it doesn't mean that it ever stops being a thing. So I feel like even if I'm not focusing on it, it's always going to permeate how I write and what I write about, right? Because my experience is always going to be different than that of a white woman.
Of course,
or a white man's. Even if we're writing the exact same story.
Well, point of view and perspective is always like two people with the same idea write completely different things, and our experience informs that. So, we barely even touched on the fact that you're right. When did you start writing? Was that just something? Did you start writing just for your thesis piece, or were you writing before that?
Writing has been another thing that I've always been into. I used to write songs. That was my biggest thing. They're terrible. This is like middle school stupid crush stuff. They're really bad. Like they hurt me physically when I read them. But that's the main stuff that I used to write. Like somewhere on my computer.
Oh my god,
they're painfully embarrassing.
Like I think that as soon as I turned like 19, I took all of my shitty teenage poetry and was like, this has got to go.
Oh, but it's memories. As bad as it is, it's nice to look back and see how far you've come. Hopefully it's not still as crappy as it was back then. But yeah, and I used to write stories. I once co-wrote a novel with my cousin, which was also terrible because we didn't know how to write descriptive stuff, so it was all dialogue. It's pretty much all dialogue. So maybe.
So you were meant to write for theater.
Maybe. Yeah. That's exactly it. I don't think I'm a great novelist, but screenwriting or playwriting, I think, is better.
Honestly, I think that, like, I have always gravitated to writing for theater. Like, maybe I wrote some stories when I was younger, but as soon as I figured out what theater was, I was writing stuff for it. But now when I think I want to write something more prosy, not stagey, I find it so difficult to do. It is really
difficult. I have so much respect for novelists.
Yeah.
Because that shit's hard.
Oh, fuck yeah. It's like, I have to describe things?
Yeah.
And that sort of comes from the theater thing of, like, it's collaborative. Like, I leave so many things open because I'm not Tennessee Williams, but also, like, it's other people get to fill it in.
Yeah.
You know? It's like that collaboration.
Yeah, that's what I think is cool. Because for books, the writer is responsible for creating an entire world.
Yeah.
But for plays, the playwright creates a part of that world, and then everyone else kind of fills in the rest, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
That everyone gets to be a part of the world building.
Yeah. Do you remember what the first play that you wrote was? Or the first thing that you could call a play?
I honestly think that it might have been Go Home. I think that was I have a big problem with finishing what I start when I'm writing. So Go Home was the first, I think, proper play that I've ever finished.
Okay.
And I guess it was the deadlines that helped, and the fact that I had people counting on me.
Deadlines help so much,
They really do.
I have so many unfinished plays.
Yeah.
Like, I wrote my solo piece. It took me 8 years to write that. And the only reason it was really finished is because I was like, I think I need to perform this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm never going to finish it. So Go Home was the first one that first finished play.
Yeah. The first play that I could call a play, I think. I wasn't too focused on writing plays before. I think I always kept my theater film stuff kind of separate from my writing stuff, but it's kind of cool to combine it.
Is there a reason why you kept them separate?
I don't know. I guess I just never thought of myself as a playwright. I liked writing, but I knew that wasn't what I wanted my main thing to be.
Okay.
I always wanted to be a performer first and a writer second. Writing was kind of my release. I'm mainly an emotional writer, so if I'm upset by something or whatever, that's what'll motivate me to write, which is why I so often don't finish things. Because then I lose my momentum. I lose the anger or the sadness, and then it's just...
It can be really hard to hold on to that kind of thing long enough to, like, complete a play.
Yeah, and to make something good.
Yeah. I was gonna... Oh, yes. I wanted to ask you, this is why, yes, I don't edit anything, so all of my... Anytime I sound stupid, I always leave that in.
That's cool. That's cool. I think you're sounding better than I am.
No, you're just fine. You're good. So we met at IndieX.
Yes.
So, which was TAPA's annual indie theater or conference for indie theater makers. Had you considered yourself an indie theater maker before that, or what was it that drew you to that conference?
I think, when did IndieX happen? That was still maybe...
I want to say spring.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah. Either I had just put on Go Home or it hadn't been put on yet. But because I hadn't done anything in Toronto, I felt like I wasn't an indie theater artist. I felt so separated from the entire Toronto theater scene that I didn't consider myself a real artist.
Okay.
I still thought of myself as a student. I thought of myself as a student that wasn't involved. I really just went there to learn. And I didn't think that I had anything to contribute to anyone else.
Did your opinion change while you were there, or?
It did not.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
It totally did not, because I still felt like, there were things that I felt like I'd heard before, but there were also a lot of things that I learned that day. And I felt super inexperienced. I was one of the only people there I knew who hadn't done anything. And I think the only other person might have been my friend Warren, who was also there. So yeah, I don't know. I just felt really out of my depth and kind of a little bit overwhelmed. But I saw it as a networking opportunity. So I met some people, and I met you.
Yeah. When you left, did you feel like you had any clarity on what you wanted to do, or were you still as sort of confused as, or confused is the wrong word, but the same as when you arrived?
I think that every step I've taken since deciding to pursue this as my career has been a step in the right direction, a step to learning more about the theater community and finding out about more ways to get involved, right? Even if some things aren't that useful to me, I think that everything is contributing in a way, and it's furthering my curiosity, and it's making me more motivated to learn more. So I do feel like it did help a lot. It did teach me a lot, and I do think that it was beneficial.
Okay. What do you want? What do you want? Like, if you were to imagine the career that you want to have from this point, aside from the fact that you were saying when you started that you wanted to be like a famous singer when you were a kid, you wanted to be, like, all that stuff. Putting that aside and like thinking about the career that you imagine, what does that look like for you?
Honestly, I still think that my dreams from when I was a kid are still very much my dreams now. I've still always wanted to be a very well-known artist and make art that matters and changes things and people. I just think that now I have a more realistic path to get there. And now I think I can see a clearer trajectory for how to reach my goals, which is really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
One of the things when I was in theater school, now this was a long time ago. When I was in theater school, they kept telling us about the importance of being. Generally they wanted us to be generic. You know, don't have hair too long. Don't grow a beard. Like don't be, be you so that you can be anything when you walk in the door for the audition. That said, I see a lot more younger actors now who are tattooed, who are pierced, who have green hair. And did anyone ever say, like, because I wonder if that's sort of like gone by the wayside, because I think it's more important to like embrace your uniqueness. But I think it might be a shift in a perception from when I was in theater school to now. Did anybody ever tell you like be generic, or was it like be who you are?
Well, every time I apply for an audition, I have to include I'm willing to dye my hair. Okay. Which I will be doing soon. I'm planning on going blonde just because the green hair does make it very difficult to get cast, because I feel like for auditions that are specifically looking for Asian women, I'm not what they're looking for. Yeah. And for things that are looking for open ethnicity, which is usually a lie, I'm still not what they're looking for, right? So I'm not saying that I don't get a decent amount of auditions, but I do think that it would open up a lot more doors if I just looked slightly less like a troll doll.
You do not look in any way like a troll doll. You do not.
If I hang upside down,
okay. Except for me, if they hang upside down, they'll look like a troll doll. All was there a particular reason why you decided to? I mean, this is old man talk here, but that you decided to dye your hair green, or was it just because you thought it was cool?
Well, okay. When I first decided to dye my hair, I wanted to dye it blue because I'd just gotten out of a breakup with a guy, and I was like, I need to change something about myself. So I was going to do this blue ombre, and that was a couple years ago. So I bleached my hair, and then I ended up liking the blonde hair so much that I kept it for a whole year. Okay. And then in the process of bleaching my hair again, I used too strong of a bleach, so all my hair fell out. Oh. So I decided to go blue, and it's just been that way for a couple years now. It's because I wanted Taco Bell. It's a long story. Okay. A lot of people already know the story, but I wanted Taco Bell. I got pulled over. My hair burned off. That's basically the gist of it. Oh. But yeah, it's been this color for 2 years, and the green is kind of how it looks when it's faded. It starts off like a pretty dark teal. Okay. But this is usually what it looks like. A large part of the reason why I've kept it like this for so long is because it helps me stand out. It helps people remember me. Right. It makes me different from all the other Asian girls, which I know it's not like a I don't want to be like them, or I don't want to be associated with them. It's like people already see Asian women as so similar. It's nice to be memorable. Yeah. So do you have a plan for do you have a plan to restage Go Home? Do you have where you're aiming to perform it or anything like that, or are you still just working on it? I am in the process of currently rewriting the entire thing, structure, characters, plot, non-narrative plot, whatever, everything. Yeah. So I think that's my main focus in terms of that show right now, but eventually I'm going to be applying for a lot of TCRs, a lot of other grants and workshops and scholarships and whatever I can get my hands on. Sure. And then hopefully some companies who are more experienced with playwriting and developing plays will be able to help me make it a much better show. And then eventually, I mean, like, end goal would be really cool to put it on at, like, Factory Theater.
Okay.
That would be awesome, I think, because I know some people who are doing that right now, who are workshopping their plays to be put on at Factory, and I want to be doing that. I think Factory would probably be my dream venue.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Is it something that you would ever try to do yourself, or do you feel like it needs to live in, like, ultimately a factory theater?
Oh, no. I would definitely put it on myself if I knew how. I just think I might need some help figuring that out, but yeah, no, I would 100% self-produce. I've been thinking about starting my own theater company, and I've been trying to get my friend involved, but I don't know if he wants to, so I'm going to keep trying to push
have you asked him?
I have a few times, and he just kind of doesn't respond. He's a weird guy.
So, the problem is he's not into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I might have to do it myself, but I have absolutely no idea how to get started with that. But I am going to the Shen development series.
Oh, so am I.
Office hours. Oh, yay!
Yeah.
Yay, that's great.
Okay.
So
I will know somebody.
Yeah.
Actually, like, all those questions, those are Derek Chua questions, and those are...
Richard.
Sorry?
Richard Lee.
Richard Lee.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also Esther.
Yeah, all of them, I think, would be...
So, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's where you're going to get your start. Have you thought of if you were to start your theater company, do you know what you would call it?
Oh, God, I have no idea. It would have to be something, like, Asian related.
Okay.
Because I do want the theater company to be catered towards, I think, East Asian women. Because I know that there are a couple Filipino theater companies. There are a couple, like, general, more Asian-centered ones. But there's nothing specifically for just East Asian women.
Right. Okay.
And I think that's what I want my focus to be.
Well, that's important to know what your focus is. Like you were saying, like you're one of the two people in the room at that playwriting thing that wants to change the world.
Yeah.
And that's a big focus for you is that. So it only makes sense.
Yeah.
You do that.
Yeah. It's probably going to have yellow in the title. Maybe my last name. My last name means yellow.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Isn't that so great? I think that's the best thing ever. I'm so glad that's my last name.
Really? So you're Cathy Yellow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know why that makes me so happy, but it's pretty cool.
I'm so excited. It's like when a brown person's last name is Brown. You know? And I've like, it took me a really long time to be comfortable with being Asian. Growing up, I didn't want to be Asian. Okay. Not because I didn't like being Asian. I just thought it would be a lot easier if I were white to be an actress.
It probably would have been.
Yeah. But now I'm so obnoxiously proud of the fact that I'm Asian, right? I'm literally like, I put it on everything. I'm like, I'm so Asian! That I'm really excited about my last name now.
How did you get to the point where you could go from not really wanting to be Asian to being proud of it? Was that what was that journey like?
I think, honestly, getting involved with the theater community in Toronto was a large part of it. Seeing these other Asian theater creators that are either just emerging or have been around for a while now, you know, kind of making their way and doing it and being proud of the fact that they're Asian, right? Nina Lee Aquino, Marjorie Chan, David Yee, Richard Lee, all of these people, Paul Sun Hyung Lee, right? It made me realize that I didn't have to be white to make something of myself. And I think that was a large part of it. And it was a lot of self-discovery stuff and getting comfortable with my body and the way I looked and who I was and just kind of growing up, right? Because I think that when you're younger, everyone's uncomfortable with who they are. But I think that as an Asian woman, especially growing up looking so different from the standard of beauty, right? I have monolids, I have a smaller nose, I have yellow skin, I had thick, coarse black hair. It was really hard, and I didn't feel as pretty as I could, but I think that I'm very comfortable with who I am now, and I feel like I finally settled into who I'm supposed to be.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good. And are you online? Do you have a website? Do you have the Twitter?
I don't have a website yet. I'm working on that.
Okay.
I think maybe when I've done a few more things, I'm going to get a website once I figure out how to make one. I have Twitter, I have Tumblr, I have Instagram, I have Facebook, I have Snapchat. I have pretty much everything that you can think of.
And if someone was to look for you on Twitter or Instagram, what would they look for?
All of my handles are usually the same. Mostly it's KAFFREE. For Twitter, there's an extra E at the end.
Okay.
And I think also for Snapchat, there's an extra E at the end.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's what you would look for.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.